There are two kinds of people in this world. People who make backups and people who haven't lost data yet. And I have been in both of those groups at one time or another. Now, in this episode, backups, what I want to start with is making sure we know what we mean when we say backup. Now, to me, a backup simply means to make a copy of a file or a folder or a database or whatever it is in another location in case you lose the one you want. So for me, a backup is nothing more than throwing something on a thumb drive or taking the chapter of a book that I'm working on and copy it up to one of my cloud services just to have a backup copy. Now, the challenge that we have with backups is that in many cases, backups are needed for what I'm going to call catastrophic losses. I have lost my computer. It's been stolen. My C drive has completely corrupted and I can't boot Windows and I can't get to my critical files in my documents folder. So in this episode, when I say backup, what I'm going to be talking about are the tools that are built into Windows that allow us to recover from these more catastrophic type situations. So if you wanted to pick one aspect of Windows that has changed so much from Windows Vista through 7, 8, 8.1, even Windows 10, it's the way Microsoft has been dealing with backup. So the best way we can possibly do this is go ahead and get started with Windows Vista, and let's see how backup worked there. Before Windows Vista came along, the Windows backup solutions that we had were kind of old school, and well, they worked, but usually in order to restore anything, in particular if you had a catastrophic backup, you would have to completely reinstall Windows, reinstall all your applications, and then use your backup software, which you also had to reinstall on Windows, to get your stuff back. Vista began to change that, although it kept some of the old stuff. So let's take a look at Vista. So I'm going to head over to Control Panel. And I'm going to go to Backup and Restore Center. Now, if you take a look at Backup and Restore Center, first of all, you're going to see you've got two choices. Number one, I can back up files, or two, I can back up my computer. So what I want to first talk about is backup files, because this is a little bit old school here. When you clicked on Backup Files, what it would do is it would make a backup, but only backups of personal data. Anything in the users folder would get backed up. So it didn't back up Windows itself, it didn't back up your applications, but it did keep your documents and stuff like that. So when you made a backup like this, in order to restore it from a catastrophic system, you would have to reinstall Vista, you would have to reinstall your applications, and then bring this stuff back in so at least you got your data. So that's kind of old school that way. However, Vista did bring in something new, and it's right here. It's Backup Computer. Now, when we click on Backup Computer, what you're doing is you are creating a system image. You are making a block level copy of your Windows partition. So usually it's your C drive. And what's on your C drive? That's going to be your Windows operating system. That's going to be all your installed applications. That's going to be all your user data. It's going to be all that stuff. And if you take a look, it wants us to put it on another drive. So I could, if I don't have another drive on here, but if I had a separate drive, and I'm not talking about a separate partition, I mean a separate drive, that would be lit up. It does see my optical drive, so I could back this up to DVD media, for example. But this was the first time we saw the idea of a system image. Now, system images are cool because a system image is designed to work with the Windows recovery environment to restore a system. So let's say I lost my entire C drive. I could throw away my old C drive, plug in a new one, and then I would use my original Windows Vista installation disk, boot up, and instead of reinstalling Windows, I could hit an option that says repair my computer, and I would say yes, and it would say, hey, do you have a system image you'd like me to copy from? And I would say yes, and it would just put that system image back. I'd get my Vista back, I'd get all my installed applications. It was a good thing. And as a matter of fact, every version of Windows since Vista has that particular option. Vista was a great start, but it still held on to a lot of old-fashioned ideas, in particular the old school backup. It wasn't until Windows 7 that we began to see a real change. Windows 7 was an evolutionary or revolutionary? Now I'll stick with evolutionary growth from Windows Vista. It still kept a little bit of the old, but started to bring in even more of the new. So let's go ahead and fire this up. Pretty much all these backup tools are in Control Panel. So let's see it. It's called Backup and Restore in Windows 7. So the first thing I want to show you is that we can make a system image. So just as we did in Vista, Windows 7 allows for the creation of a system image. And again, that system image, which is put on a separate drive, if you have a big problem, you can use your Windows recovery disk, and then you can go ahead and boot and recover from that system image. So that's a very, very good thing. However, you still have backup, but it's a little bit of a different animal. So let's take a look. So Windows backup has not been set up. Let's go ahead and set that up. Now the first thing I want you to see is where the backup destination is. Windows 7 actually dumped tapes for the first time. So good old tape backup, which old guys like me had been using for a long time, pretty much gone within the world of Windows. So we could back up to optical media, we could back up on a network depending on the version of Windows 7, and it was a good thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to say I'm going to back up to the DVD. Now I'm going to let Windows choose, and basically it's just going to save personal information. It will also include libraries, by the way. So if you have any libraries, it would save those as well. Or you can say let me choose. So let's hit this. Now if you say let me choose, you would think, well, I'll just back up everything. Well, watch what happens here. So if you take a look, here's the data files, which is the exact same thing that Windows would have backed up if you did it automatically. But you'll also see here's my C drive. So I'm going to say, yeah, back up my C drive. So you're like, yay, I'm going to back everything up. But look what happens if you hit this pull down. Yeah, it'll back up your applications, but do you see Windows in there? It won't back up the Windows operating system itself. So if you use this backup in Windows 7, you're going to have to, ready? Reinstall Windows, but at least this time you won't have to reinstall your applications. It will bring back your applications, and it will bring back all your user data as well. So a little bit better, an evolutionary growth compared to what we saw in Windows Vista. Right here is file history. Now I want you to see this up close and personal. Now notice what it's going to save copies of: libraries, desktop, contacts, favorites, and offline OneDrive devices. This is a nice way of saying, yeah, it's kind of like the old backup where it just saved personal data, but we're going to call it file history. File history is interesting. It's almost like volume shadow copy, but forced to another drive. Not exactly, but it acts kind of like that. So let me turn this on. And by default, I only have one other place to put it. So it saw that and said, do you want me to put it there? So it is like volume shadow copy, but whereas regular volume shadow copy is stored on the same drive that the volume itself is where the files are, this just puts it on a separate drive. So it actually works out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and let that run. So Microsoft really felt that this would be sufficient, that the concept of backup is no longer necessary. Now granted, Windows 8.1 would allow you to make a system image, and you could also make a bootable system disk so you could recover from that image. But in Microsoft's opinion, the idea of a backup tool, as we had seen in pretty much every version of Windows that, well, I remember, became obsolete. When Windows 10 came along, the one big difference is that Windows 10 brought back the Windows 7 style backup. Now Microsoft claims that is mainly because we want to have a tool that we can recover from Windows 7 backups and stuff like that, but it actually does work pretty well, although it is extremely similar to file history. And remember, when it comes to backing up, you're the one in charge, and always make a copy for yourself. These are great tools, but just copying something to a thumb drive can save you a lot of trouble in the long run.